Wait before you take that next step, before you finish closing this chapter in your mind, before you let the decision you have been quietly forming, the one about moving on, about letting go, about finally releasing whatever has been holding your attention in this connection, before that decision becomes final. Stop, because there is something you do not have yet, a piece of information that changes the picture, not in a way that asks you to abandon your own wisdom or override your own instincts, but in a way that adds a dimension to this situation that you have not had access to until this exact moment. And I would not be telling you to stop if it did not matter. I would not be using this kind of urgency for something small. So take a breath, set down whatever certainty you have been building toward, and let me show you what I am seeing. I felt this the moment I tuned into your energy today, and I felt it with a kind of insistence that I do not encounter often. The kind of insistence that tells me something time sensitive is present, something that wants to reach you now, in this moment, before the natural momentum of where you have been heading carries you past the point where this information would have been useful. You have been moving toward letting go. I want to acknowledge that clearly, because I think part of what makes this message feel urgent is that it is not arriving in a vacuum. It is arriving in the middle of a process you have already begun, a process of distancing, of preparing yourself for an ending, of doing the quiet internal work that people do when they are getting ready to release something that has not been giving them what they need. And I want to honor that process, because if you have been moving toward letting go, there are reasons for that. Real reasons rooted in real experiences that deserve to be respected. But I am being shown something that exists alongside those reasons, something that does not erase them, but that changes how they fit into the larger picture of what is actually happening in this connection. Let me describe what I am seeing, because the specifics matter here, and I do not want to leave anything vague when clarity is what this moment calls for. There is movement happening on the other side of this connection, movement that you cannot currently see because it is happening in a space you do not have access to, in this person's interior world, in the part of them that processes things slowly, privately, and often in ways that do not become visible until they have reached a kind of critical mass. Something has been building in them, and it has been building in a direction that is the opposite of where you currently believe things are heading. I want to be careful here, because I am not telling you that this means everything is suddenly fine, or that the issues that led you toward considering letting go were not real, or that you should ignore your own judgment in favor of some promise about what this person might do. None of that is what I am saying. What I am saying is this: the story you have been telling yourself about where this person stands, about what they feel, about how invested they actually are, may be missing something significant. Not because you have been wrong to read the situation the way you have read it based on what has been visible, but because what has been visible has not been the whole picture. Let me go deeper into what has been happening on their end, because I think understanding this is the key to everything in this reading. This person has been struggling, not in a way that they have been showing you, or perhaps even showing anyone clearly, but internally, with something that has made it difficult for them to be present, to communicate, to show up in the ways that would have made their feelings and their investment more visible to you. I am not going to tell you exactly what this struggle is, because the specifics belong to them, and because what matters for you right now is not the details but the existence of it. There has been something happening beneath the surface of their behavior, something that has affected how they have been showing up, not just with you, but in general. A kind of internal weight that has made consistency, communication, and clarity harder for them than it would normally be. And here is the part that I think is most important. The way this has looked from your side, the distance, the inconsistency, the absence, has likely felt like evidence of something specific. Evidence that they do not care as much as you hoped. Evidence that this is not as significant to them as it is to you. Evidence that supports the decision you have been moving toward. But the same behavior, viewed from inside their experience, has a different meaning. It is not absence of feeling. It is feeling that has become tangled up with something else they have been carrying, something that has made expressing that feeling or even fully accessing it themselves much harder than it should be. I want to speak to a specific moment that I am feeling very clearly, a moment that has either already happened recently or is very close to happening on their end. There is a point where the weight they have been carrying, whatever it is, reaches a threshold, a point where it becomes too heavy to continue managing in the way they have been managing it. And at that threshold, something shifts. The the fog that has been making it difficult for them to be present begins to lift, even if only partially, even if only temporarily at first. And in that lifting, what becomes visible to them with a clarity that may genuinely surprise them is you, the space you occupy in their life, what your presence has meant, what the prospect of your absence, of you actually moving on, actually means to them when they allow themselves to fully consider it. This moment of clarity is close. I feel it approaching with a specific quality of nearness that is part of why this message carries the urgency it does. If you complete the process of moving on before this moment arrives, before this person has the chance to come out of whatever fog they have been in and see clearly what is at stake, you may be closing a door that was about to open from the other side. Not because the door was never going to open, but because of timing. Because the moment when it would have opened coincided with the moment when you decided it was already closed. Does this feel like it is touching something real for you, Virgo? Have you been sensing that there is more happening beneath the surface of this person's recent distance than what is visible? Or has this reading surprised you, brought up something you had not considered? Let me know in the comments. I want to know how this is landing. I want to be very careful here because I do not want this message to be received as pressure to stay in something that has genuinely not been serving you, or as a reason to abandon boundaries that you set for good reasons. This message is not asking you to wait indefinitely. It is not asking you to ignore patterns that have caused you real pain, or to set aside your own needs in favor of giving someone else more time to figure out their feelings. Your needs matter. Your timeline matters. The decision about how much space you give any situation to resolve itself is entirely yours, and nothing in this reading is meant to override that. What this message is offering is information, a piece of the picture that you did not have, and what you do with that piece is up to you. For some of you, this information might mean a small pause, not an indefinite one, but enough space to see if what I am describing becomes visible in some way before you take the final step you have been considering. A short window, not because you owe anyone that window, but because you might want it for your own clarity, so that whatever you decide with the fullest picture available. For others, this information might simply be something to hold, not as a reason to change your timeline, but as something that will matter later when you look back on this period and want to understand it fully. Sometimes knowing the full truth of a situation matters, even when it does not change the outcome, because it changes how you carry the outcome. It changes the story you tell yourself about what happened and why. Only you know which of these applies to your situation. Trust that knowing. Inhale. I want to speak now to something else that came through, something about you specifically and the position you have been in throughout this process of considering letting go. You have been doing this carefully, thoughtfully, not impulsively, not out of anger, but through a slow accumulation of evidence and feeling that has brought you to this point. That carefulness reflects something important about how you approach decisions that matter. You do not move on lightly. You do not release things without having genuinely tried, genuinely hoped, genuinely given the situation real chances to become what you needed it to be. And I want to honor that, because the carefulness with which you have approached this means that whatever decision you ultimately make, it will be one you can stand behind, one that was not made in haste, that was not made without consideration, that reflects genuine reflection rather than reaction. This message does not change the validity of that process. It simply adds something to it, a piece of information that, when integrated into everything else you already know, might shift the picture slightly or might not. Sometimes information like this confirms that the decision being made is still the right one, just with a fuller understanding of why. And sometimes it opens a small window that changes the timing, even if it does not change the eventual destination. Either way, you remain the one who decides. This message is not trying to take that from you. It is simply trying to make sure that whatever decision you make it with everything available to you rather than with a piece of the picture missing. Let me speak to what I feel is most likely to happen in the near term, based on everything that has come through. If this person is moving toward the clarity I described, toward the moment where the fog lifts and what is at stake becomes visible to them, there is going to be a change in their behavior. Not a dramatic one necessarily, but a noticeable one. A reaching out that feels different from previous reaching out. A presence that feels more genuine, less distracted, more like the version of them that you connected with originally. If you see this happen, even in a small way, even in something that seems minor on the surface, pay attention to it. Not because you need to immediately respond by abandoning whatever boundaries or decisions you have set, but because it is information, confirmation perhaps, of what this reading is describing. A signal that the internal shift I am sensing is actually occurring. And if you do not see this happen, if the pattern continues exactly as it has been, that too is information. It does not mean this reading was wrong about what is happening internally for this person, but it might mean that whatever shift is occurring in them is taking longer than the timeline that makes sense for your life right now. And that is okay. Your life does not have to wait for someone else's internal process, no matter how real that process is. As I bring this reading toward its close, I want to leave you with something that I think matters more than the specific question of whether to wait or to move on. You are not foolish for hoping. Whatever has kept you invested in this connection up until this point, whatever made it hard to simply walk away cleanly without considering whether there might be more to the story, That is not weakness. It is a reflection of how much you genuinely cared and how seriously you take the connections that matter to you. And you are also not foolish if you decide, even after everything in this reading, that moving on is still the right choice for you. Information about someone else's internal struggles does not obligate you to restructure your life around, waiting for them to resolve those struggles. You are allowed to prioritize your own well-being, your own timeline, your own needs, even while holding compassion for what someone else might be going through. What this message offers is simply completeness, the fuller picture, the piece that was missing. And with that fuller picture, whatever you choose it knowingly, with clarity, with the kind of informed peace that comes from having considered everything available to you rather than acting on a partial view. That peace, the peace of having all the information, is valuable regardless of what decision it ultimately supports. If this reading reached you at the right moment today, please share it with a Virgo who might need to hear this, and leave me a comment below. Tell me what this brought up for you. Tell me whether this changes anything about where you have been heading, or whether it simply adds context to a decision you already feel settled in. I read every single word you share. Every story matters to me, and I carry your energy with care long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, trust yourself. You have been navigating this with more wisdom than you may be giving yourself credit for. And whatever you decide it as someone who has all the pieces. That is all this message ever wanted for you.